Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 6th November 2020. In this video, we'll be discussing a couple of issues. The first one is with respect to hydrogen fuel, and the second one is regarding the structural reforms of our economy, which is required to put India into a path of sustainable development. This article titled Fueling a Green Future is talking about the potential of green hydrogen based vehicular fuel. We know that transport sector has been one of the major cause for increased greenhouse gases in our country. So in order to make a transition towards cleaner fuels, hydrogen has actually become an important source, and we are also exploring another possibility in the form of battery operated electric vehicles. So the article is trying to compare between hydrogen fuel and electronic vehicle. If you have to understand the status of vehicular emissions, they form nearly 33% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So in order to tackle this, especially with respect to the road transport segment, the government has come up with various schemes like the FAME scheme, which has two versions, 1 and 2. FAME stands for Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Hybrid and Electric Vehicles. So it has come up with various tax benefits, etc., to make electronic vehicles or electric vehicles very adaptable to the Indian market. And in the present times, we have another option in the form of hydrogen fuel, which has the same objective of making a transition towards cleaner fuel. So what is the option with respect to blending hydrogen into our traditional fossil fuels? So typically, if we have to take a look at hydrogen, it can be produced in three ways. The traditional way is through fossil fuels and the burning, that is considered to be a grey hydrogen. The next one is the impact of carbon sequestration on the hydrogen based industry. So hydrogen can also be produced by this carbon sequestration techniques through carbon capture, utilization and storage applications, wherein you try to capture the carbon dioxide in certain formats and store them in certain caverns or caves for a very long time, as done in the Scandinavian countries. So this is called blue hydrogen. This is a very expensive method, and therefore at this point of time it is very difficult to commercially scale it. The next one is green hydrogen, which is nothing but using renewable energy. At present, hydrogen is being blended with the compressed natural gas, and this hydrogen is actually extracted directly from natural gas itself. The problem is, it is still being extracted from a fossil fuel. Even though this leads to 22% reduction of cost, the fact that CNG is still used to produce and the complicated process of blending gives us an opportunity to move towards better technologies. Definitely, cost reduction is a welcome sign, but we also have to focus on the end objective of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions as well. Having said that, as such, when compared with the natural gas that we normally use without blending hydrogen, and comparing it with the hydrogen version, there is nearly 70% reduction with respect to carbon monoxide. Given the commercial viability and also the environmental sustainability angle, India should definitely look into all the avenues to tap in the technologies that are relevant in this segment. If we do not want to take up blending, another commercially viable technology that India can explore is the electric vehicle segment. Now, when we are talking about this electricity, the source can either be a fuel cell or it can be a battery. Now, when we are talking about hydrogen, we have to understand that it comes into the category of fuel cells. The fuel in the fuel cell can actually generate the electricity required for the electric vehicle to go forward. And in this, we are talking about hydrogen fuel cell. Now, the economic viability and the environmental desirability of this fuel cell depends on how we are going to produce this hydrogen. Again, when we're talking about hydrogen, we also want to consider batteries. Batteries have certain economic and practical constraints because the raw material required for this battery, that is lithium. Lithium mining is one problematic area because we are again dependent on external sources for sourcing our batteries and therefore lithium. So South American countries have a huge potential and they have something called the lithium triangle. We have to diversify our options with respect to the possibility of this battery vehicles at this point of time, because newer technologies can transform the segment at any possible time. We should not discard it, but at the same time we also have to take a look at what is possible at this point of time. What India can actually do is it can focus on hydrogen. Now, are we saying that hydrogen vehicles or hydrogen fueled electric vehicles are completely immune to the production of greenhouse gases? That is not the case. The production of hydrogen requires greenhouse gas emissions as well. So, in the entire life cycle, if we take a look at the production of hydrogen, depending on the source of this, if we are producing it from natural gas, it can range anywhere between 130 to 230 grams of CO2 per kilometer. So this is not actually entirely clean as thought out. If you compare it with the greenhouse gas emissions for the production of the battery, the greenhouse gases required in the production and mining or the entire life cycle of this battery, which is the life of e-vehicle which is driven by a battery, is much higher. It is in the range of 160 to 270 grams of CO2 per kilometer. Now, obviously, when talking from an environmental standpoint, the option will be in favor of hydrogen and not lithium. But lithium batteries, the technology required for that has been evolving and the costs have significantly come down when compared with a hydrogen fuel cell. Therefore, the market is naturally inclined towards lithium right now. So, this market shift will naturally happen when hydrogen becomes even more economically feasible. So, it is in this segment that India must focus upon, because India, through its oil marketing companies and its ability to market and also garner various sources, we have a vast experience with respect to this production. We also can leverage upon the technologies if right amount of R&D investments are made both by the industry as well as the government. Now this is an important segment. Naturally, when we are talking about newer technologies, government and the private sector should come together. India has hardly 0.1% of GDP investments in R&D, which is a very minute amount. So it is the responsibility of the government to tap into the resources through budgetary allocations for R&D. At the same time, we can also leverage the profits of the public sector entities, of especially the oil marketing companies, to make this transition towards cleaner fuels and therefore a cleaner country. In this regard, we also have to take the help of educational institutions and research bodies like TERI, which specialize in sustainable development and clean energy initiatives. So that is the gist of this article. The fact that we have to move towards hydrogen based economy is very clear in this, especially the green economy, where the source of production of hydrogen is through renewable energy. This article is taken from the Live Mint and it is titled "The Structural Reforms We Need for Infrastructure Investment." Now, let me go back to the basics. If you take a look at the GDP formula, it is consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus net trade. Now, in this article, we are talking about infrastructure investment. Why are we talking about infrastructure investment? Here, you have to understand a concept called multiplier effect. What is this multiplier effect? If you make a certain amount of investment into a sector, it has a potential to generate employment in various sectors. Infrastructure is one such sector. Directly, if we create infrastructure, it will create jobs in the sector of construction. Ultimately, with the right kind of infrastructure, your logistics will be improved. When your logistics are improved, newer companies and therefore FDI will increase. When FDI increase, more jobs will come into the picture. It can be both manufacturing, or it can be with respect to the service industry, to cater to the needs of the customers who use this manufacturing services as well. So, as a whole, infrastructure has a potential to create employment and sustainable growth. In the beginning of this year, the government recognized this need and announced a plan called the National Infrastructure Pipeline. Now, the emphasis has been on PPP mode of development, that is, to garner the private sources of funding to develop the infrastructure, and it has allocated funds of nearly 102 lakh crores for the next few years with respect to the infrastructure development. The reason why this is important is because if you're talking about the ease of doing business, which is very crucial for attracting the foreign direct investments, one of the major factor that stops foreign companies to invest in our country is the high logistics cost. If you take a look at the logistics cost, it is ranging somewhere between 15 to 17% of our GDP. So the cost is very high. If you compare it with advanced nations, say for example US, it is somewhere in the range of 4 to 10% when you compare it with the top 20 or even the top 30 nations. So our objective must be to reduce this cost of logistics, and therefore, rightly recognizing the importance of infrastructure sector, the government has announced this plan. But there are certain caveats here, and we need to address those structural anomalies to ensure that ease of doing business actually happens, and thereby we get investments into our infrastructure sector. Let us have a look at them. The first factor is the project delays. Now, one might be wondering, project delays is a problem on the execution side, and it is actually the problem of the company that is bidding to participate in this process. So, what can government do here? If you take a look at land acquisition as a problem, this has been one of the major contentious issue with respect to a lot of projects in the field of infrastructure development. If you're talking especially about brownfield projects or developing the already existing projects, data shows that there is inadvertently a huge delay because of already occupied area, and it is difficult to acquire or adjust the land in tandem with the requirements of that particular project. The second aspect is delay in payments. Now, when we talk about the PPP mode, the understanding here is that most of the time government is definitely infusing certain amount of money into the project, and this delay is actually causing the delay of the project because the companies would not want to invest a higher amount of money if the government is not paying them up. So this will slow down the entire process, and because of this the cost also gets escalated because the company still has to pay for the labor, for the salaries, even if the work is moving at a very slow pace. This totally inflates the cost of the project and therefore makes it a cost failure sometimes. Thus, an approved project with a committed expenditure should have resolved land and other environmental issues before the launch itself. That will actually create a huge confidence for the investor. This article writer questions the logic behind expecting to start road and rail infrastructure projects without even actually starting the land acquisition process completely. So, are we expecting the companies to construct the roads and railways to a certain extent and then hope for the government to actually clear the rest of the land acquisition process? That is simply impractical to say the least. This is a huge issue of governance deficit. And the second issue, like I have already said, not being able to clear the bills calls for a public fund management system where timely disbursal is ensured. Because of lack of this timely dispersal, it has a multiplier effect in the negative sense. It has a spillover effect rather. For example, if you take the IL&FS crisis, the non-banking financial giant, which has recently seen a crisis because of the inability of the infrastructure to pay back money, and it created a huge mess of non-performing assets for the NBFC. One of the major reason is again inability of the government to pay money on time and the project delays. So normally infrastructure projects have a very long gestation period, say like 10-20 years. Now the cost is already escalated. If it gets further delayed, it would only hurt the ability of the company to pay back, and therefore it affects the entire financial system. Once these two issues are covered properly, investments will definitely come into the place, and it will also increase the investor confidence given the huge market that India has. That is the gist of this article.